I wanted to take a second and say thank you. Thank you for listening to our little podcast. I've really enjoyed this project, the conversations, and the music. Special thanks to all of our guests, and thank you to people all over the world who've downloaded or streamed Galaxy Tenants. I want to recognize all of the countries where we have listeners. The United States, Canada, Mexico, Jamaica, Guatemala, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary, Serbia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Russia, Egypt, Kenya, United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Vietnam, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. Send us an email at galaxytenants@gmail.com and let us know where you're listening from. Again, thank you. And now on to the podcast.
Welcome to Galaxy Tenants. On today's episode, we head to Seattle for a conversation with Megan Letts of Mama Magnolia, and we feature their songs Take This Love and White Flag.
How are you, Megan?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm really good at current.
Current, good. Yeah. It always seems like such a loaded question these days because I feel like people are starting to be a little more honest about how they actually are, which I'm grateful for.
And it seems people are, while being honest, are talking about how they're feeling a little bit better than they were. It seems like we're coming out of a little bit of the fog here.
Yes. Last week was a very foggy week for me. I was really feeling it. I was feeling we're coming up on a year of this thing. And since being in Seattle, it was like, we locked down really early here. So yeah, I am doing all right. I'm strangely grateful for this time. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple ways of looking at it. I mean, you can look at it as like you're trapped inside, or you can look at it as like this is some time to reflect and to dive into some other creative projects and some other things that may have been on the back burner for a while.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%.
I want to start with Alaska. Tell me about Alaska.
So I moved to Alaska in the middle of 7th grade, which was like puberty-wise the worst time to move.
Where did you move from?
I moved from Montana, tiny town in Montana, of 1,000 people, West Yellowstone. It's the west entrance to Yellowstone National Park. So beautiful place to grow up. And then we moved to Anchorage, and it was hilariously a culture shock because it was a city. And so thinking of Anchorage as a city to most people is laughable, but to me, I went from having 12 people in my entire grade to 400. I mean, it was like, what? So Alaska for me was actually a culture shock, not in the way that most people would think of it as. It was just the coolest place to grow up. Similar to Montana, where the outdoors were your back and front yard, Alaska had this rugged, kind of independent feeling to it that I was really grateful to experience as a kid.
How long did you live in Alaska?
7th to 12th grade, and I graduated college or high school and went to college in Denver. But growing up there, through my years of high school, it actually had this really special music scene and really a lot of, as far as like how I liked to ingest music, which was definitely like performing arts center, jazz, kind of these bigger acts that would stop by on their way to Japan, kind of a thing. And so it was a really cool place to grow up musically. I had a really great community of jazz musicians that I would play with, and it felt like a big city to me too, because I was from Podunk, Montana.
That's funny. It's usually the opposite for folks. They
Oh,
move to Alaska, and it's like we're getting off the grid, you know.
I was like, I'm on the grid. I got a cell phone. I got a cell phone when I moved there.
Upgrade.
Unstoppable. City girl.
The reason I ask about Alaska is because I've never been to Alaska, and it's at the top of my list of places that I want to visit. And I just started kind of exploring the music scene there. I'm finding out there's a lot of like small little hole in the wall venues, and that's the kind of place that I like to consume music, or those kind of tiny little spots. And I've seen a lot of bands from Denver in this area go up there and do pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, I never really got into the music scene as far as like full-time gigging. I had a small jazz combo, and we would open for, I had the opportunity to open for Esperanza Spalding and Terrence Blanchard, and all these really incredible jazz acts, because, there wasn't a lot of us doing jazz, doing the jazz, but we were good enough that those acts said, yeah, of course you guys can play a 20-30 minutes set. And we were in high school, but we were passionate enough about it that they gave us a shot. I'm really interested to go back as an adult, because I haven't been back in a decade. Crazy.
Wow, that is crazy. When you came to Denver and the time that you've spent in Denver, what did you appreciate about Denver?
Mostly when I first moved to Denver, going to music school was like the coolest shit ever. I was just like a whole bunch of nerds like me. My grandparents live in Colorado Springs or Monument, so I was very comfortable with Denver. I knew it. We had some family friends there, so it felt natural and great. And I loved the music school up top. And I didn't really dive into the music scene until about 4 years after living there. I didn't even see a Red Rocks show until like my senior year of college. I was so focused on like my studies, and I would go to Dazzle every weekend. I lived at Dazzle when it was still on Lincoln, the old Dazzle. And yeah, they had student prices. So I was there a lot. And then I really appreciated, once I started playing more shows and started a band, and I really appreciated people's willingness to listen to new music and kind of try it out, because pretty quickly with Mama Magnolia, we got pigeonholed very strangely into jam and bluegrass, neither of which we are. And I was very frustrated by that, because I was like, we're like way more like soul hip hop than either of those. But Denver, we weren't tapped into that scene in Denver. And so I felt really strange playing music to like jam bluegrass fans when we weren't not even close to that. We have like 3 songs with solos in them. And we don't have a mandolin in sight. So
did it have to do with the places that you were playing? Because I think that a lot of times when bands play specific rooms, they're assigned to a genre regardless of what their sound is.
Absolutely. And also we had our bass player Zach was in that jam prog rock band Technicolor Tone Factory back in the day, which was in Boulder. And so his little groupie fan base that was like, oh, new band, new project for Zach. And I guess that's what I was kind of getting to, is that they gave us a chance. They were like, cool, let's like check these kids out, even though they're not what we would usually listen to. I was very grateful for that. It kind of is a double-edged sword, because I was grateful to have any fans whatsoever, but the fans were not usually like, they weren't the type of fan, whatever the hell that means, but they weren't the type of music listener that we would have attracted if we had started in New York or LA or San Francisco or Seattle. Would have been a very different initial fan base, I think.
When did you relocate to Seattle, and what was the necessity or desire for that move?
Sure. That was the end of last year, November of last year. And by last year, I mean 2019.
The year that counted, the one, not the one that didn't count. Right, got it. Yeah.
So November of 2019, I took a job here in Seattle with Red Light Management. And the Red Light Management office here is very small. There's just 6 of us. And it's 6 people that I adore and get along with extremely well. It doesn't feel like corporate at all. It's like very close. And that job, it did come out of necessity because, to be honest, I was very unhappy at my previous job. I was at 7S, and there was a lot of reasons why I was unhappy. It wasn't just like the company or anything. It was just my own personal happiness. I didn't feel like I was able to communicate my needs very well. It's really hard being a woman in the music industry and being a manager. You're always towing that line of being confident and being bitchy. Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges? Has there been progress that you've seen in the amount of time that you've been in the industry? And I can only imagine, and I don't have your perspective. I can only imagine that there's a long way to go.
Yeah. Yes. There is a very long way to go, but I do believe that baby steps are being taken and some long strides. I have this very fascinating perspective where I get to both be a musician and experience that sexism, and then be in the industry and experience that sexism too. I think, on just about every Zoom call that I've had, it's mostly white men. And just in the last year, a lot of the conversations, there are certainly some companies, some record labels, some that are predominantly women, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think that those teams work really well and are really communicative, and we're usually pretty good at talking about our feelings because we've had more practice. But I think that opportunities, I always have this strange feeling of towing the line of handouts, giving people a handout because you're supposed to give this job to a woman or a person of color or whatever it is, because you're supposed to, and then also because they deserve it. And that's something in my mind that I've struggled with, because I question a lot of times. I'm like, am I here because I deserve this and like I earned it, or because I am a woman and they needed to put a woman in this seat? And I'm learning to believe because of the strange structural feelings that I just get from being a woman in the industry. I'm learning to believe that I deserve it and I've earned it, finally, for the first time. It's like, no, have the confidence and be here.
I'm not having you on my podcast because you're not a badass.
Oh, thank you.
Lay that out there. Yeah. I fear you.
I appreciate that.
It sucks that you've been made to feel that way because you've put so much into this industry and so much into your profession. I recognize for sure that there's a long way to go, and I hope we get there sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think it's 2 parts. It's the internal part of every woman in the industry to start to believe in her confidence, and then it's also the affirmation of the men around them that I think is incredibly necessary, because we haven't felt affirmed for most of the time that women have been in the workforce. There's always kind of been a point to prove yourself. And so I believe that men need to be more affirming towards women. I just really do. I think it's really important. And then that can help build the confidence for women to continue to have space and take up the space that they deserve to take up in the music industry. And I see that both on management and artist side.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I need to not be super insecure and a piece of shit, and I need to encourage you and reaffirm your great work.
Amazing, right?
Okay.
Dudes do it to each other all the time. Dude, that was so sick, man. That was so sick.
Fuck.
Truly, dudes do it all the time to each other. And it's really this uncomfortable space that I've witnessed of also dudes don't want to be too affirming to women, because what if they think that they're getting me too'd? What if there's, but it's not. It's just professional affirmation is so important. And saying like, hey, good job. Thank you for your hard work. It's like, we're not that hard, dudes. That's all we want.
Do you find that between women, there's a lot of affirming of work, and are women generally supportive of one another in the industry?
Yes, I think so. At least in my experience. There's a lot of like, we got to stick together or we're going to fall apart kind of thing. I feel that way. Absolutely. From most of the women that I work with. Very affirming, very teamwork oriented.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Contrast Denver and Seattle for me.
Sure. I only got like 4 months outside of my home in Seattle, and I got 10 years in Denver. But in those 4 months, I went to a lot of shows. I really wanted to, I was like, I gotta try this out. Music venues, Denver takes the cake on music venues. It's just the ability for any size room and any genre of music is like, I didn't actually realize what I had when I was there. Something like The Mission, which is, the creme de la creme, was amazing. But then look at like even a room like Cervantes, that equivalent room here doesn't really exist. So I think that the Denver takes the cake hard on venues.
So as far as just the different size rooms and the volume of rooms and the ability to climb up the ladder within that. Okay. Are there too many rooms in Denver?
Potentially, yeah. Everyone and their mom wants a music venue in Denver. I think that it could be slimmed down a bit. I haven't even been to a lot of places in Denver. I never went to your mom's house. I never made it to the new Lost Lake. I played shows there before it got revamped. I think that I played one show at Globe Hall, but I never went there for a show.
What's strange is that during the pandemic, you've seen some rooms close, some places go out of business, but in Denver, I've seen a bunch of new places pop up, which doesn't make any sense to me.
How?
You're like having your grand opening at like the peak of a pandemic,
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. But it's happening.
What places have closed?
Oh, man. Westward was publishing a list of all the restaurants and rooms. I would have to go back and look at it. I'm extremely thankful that the majority, if not all of the rooms that I really appreciate, I think are still operating, though there is still some time for this to play out. And it looks like the Save Our Stages Act may not benefit everybody or everybody as much as they thought it was going to.
Right.
So
it's been pretty shocking here. We haven't lost any rooms, thankfully, in Seattle. I've got 2 favorite rooms here, Nectar and Tractor. They're both just like the thing that Seattle definitely has venue-wise over Denver is like cool-ass bar. And I mean cool-ass bar, not like bougie flower wall with neon light bar. I'm talking like a badass bar, like cowboy vibes or, just a good bar. You don't even have to drink to appreciate a good bar, but cool-ass bar with a venue and with a real venue, like a real stage, real sound, like sounds amazing. But there's also this element of community at the bar space. And both those venues really have that.
Is Nectar, is that Andy's place?
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Tell me about the vibe. How does the vibe differ?
Seattle rooms are quieter, which is a good thing. Not as much talking from the audience. Also not as much dancing. Not as much like, it's like it feels a little more like show-y. Like we are here to watch the show. And sometimes it feels awkward playing because you're kind of like, does anybody like this? Especially coming from Denver, which is like the audience is louder than the band sometimes. And then you finish a song and it's like amazing raucous applause. And you're like, oh, you like it? Cool. Awesome. I wasn't sure how you felt about this. But yeah, they're more respectful. They're quieter, which feels odd, to be honest. For me, I don't know how it feels for other artists. In Denver, they just talk. Wow.
Tell me what you love about being talked over while you're singing into a microphone by somebody in the crowd. Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
I'm taking my time to feel it. 'cause I know I need it to respect and reflect my heart, love. Desperation is not what I want. Is it the other way? Doesn't matter if you go or if you stay. Respect and reflect your heart, love. Desperation is not what I thought of. Don't let me go. We both know our hearts will slip and fall. This order's tall. These stairs will crawl. Pushed up against the wall. The love you take is the love we'll make. So take this loving. Forget all the words we once said. We both know we're in over our heads. Respect and reflect my heart, love. Desperation is not what I want. Don't let me go, 'cause we both know our hearts will slip and fall. This order's tall. These stairs will crawl. Push up against the wall. The love you take is the love we'll make. So take this love and don't let me go, 'cause we both know our hearts will slip and fall. This order's tall. These stairs will crawl. Pushed up against the wall. The love you take, I want to break. So take this love and
What's been going on with Mama Magnolia during the pandemic and with you relocating? How does that work logistically?
We've been kind of a cross-country band for a couple years now because Jackson, our drummer, relocated to the East Coast, Jersey City, in 2000 something, a couple years ago, in the late teens of 2000s. And so we were already kind of used to that structure, which was a lot of recording something and then playing to it and kind of Skyping in somebody at a rehearsal or FaceTiming in. So that was already kind of part of our equation of functioning. When I moved to Seattle, there was definitely the conversation of, this is hilarious, the first year I live here, we will not tour. Dun, da, da. We had already planned it. We were like, no touring for the first year I'm in Seattle because I really wanted to put roots down here.
No dates to cancel?
No dates to cancel. We did have one rescheduled, the Bluebird. We had a Bluebird show that we've had to reschedule and then it's supposed to be next month. So that's not happening. So that kind of working across the country was already part of our vibe. The first couple months of the pandemic, we do our weekly call, check in with each other, but there wasn't a lot of creative juices flowing. Then the end of last year, beginning of this year, we finally said, let's write again. Let's figure a way to write. So we ended up doing a full weekend Zoom writing retreat together where we were up at 8 and working till midnight every night, like really working on songs, sharing ideas, doing breakout sessions. We had like a big heart-to-heart conversation where we talked about our fears and our desires and our goals. And that felt really good. And we wrote 3 songs, like start to finish, over Zoom. What the hell? What a time to be alive. Yeah.
I love your band.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. It's a really great band, just musically and vocally and lyrically. And I think that in Colorado, whereas you might have some bigger audiences than in other places, there are so many bands here that a band like Mama Magnolia may have fallen a little bit under the radar relative to what a band like that could do in other markets.
Right.
And that's not at all minimizing, because like I said, you guys have had great crowds, great shows. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like Mama Magnolia is destined for national attention. And I really love your band, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are continuing and that you're writing new material, because you know, with the pandemic and this pause, it's a wait and see, and there's not a lot of people, because of being depressed or upset or whatever the case may be, the creative juices aren't flowing.
Right.
So I'm really grateful and glad to hear that you guys are writing, and it's great.
Me too. I'm glad that everyone's still in it for the long haul, and I really believe that our music is incredibly unique. And I, every time I get nervous, like, okay, what's going to happen with the band? I just revisit the songs that we've written together. And I'm like, this is cool. Please don't, and I'm telling myself, please don't give up on this. You know, this is something, as I've, really chosen a career in management with the ability to continue to be a musician, this is the project that I want to put my time and energy into. And it's not a side hustle. It's like, it's part of me.
And as you're doing more in management, or you're doing more in the industry, it opens up more doors for your band and gives you more knowledge. I'm excited for you guys. I think that's wonderful. Is the pandemic over? Because I'm seeing shows without people wearing masks, and I was just curious if you could.
Yeah, it's totally over. I mean,
so it is.
I didn't have to change the date of my wedding twice.
No, we're done, right?
We're done.
Okay.
That's another difference between Denver and Seattle. I will say the difference, and I don't know if it's the governor, I don't know if it's the news sources, I'm not sure what it is, but the laxness around, specifically in the late millennial age group, of taking the pandemic seriously is painful to watch between Seattle and Denver.
So I'm not going to name any venues. I'm not going to name any bands. I'm not going to name anybody in particular, because I think we're already going into some hard times and people are dealing with different things, and there's no reason to kick anyone while they're down or whatever. But
of course,
I'm seeing photos coming out of events where people don't have masks on. They're in a group of like 10 people all hugging. Or another thing that's troubling is apparently musicians are exempt from the mask thing, and that's not real. But there's hardly any musicians wearing masks. And for some reason, as we discussed the other day on Facebook, they're flying artists across country from different places, different venues, different promoters are flying artists from different spaces across the country to come play in Denver, where the artists in Denver are struggling. Right. And I thought that was worth discussing and pointing out.
Sure. And I guarantee it's not just Denver that this is happening. I think that you and I probably have quite a microscope on Denver, but I think that it's probably happening in New York. It's probably happening in Nashville, in different spaces. And my personal take on it is, I think it is, I want to be careful here, because like you said, there's no reason to be like, fuck you guys for doing this or whatever. It's mostly just, it feels like such a like people are so misinformed. That to me is the feeling that I get, is like, do you not know? Like, I don't, how else do you say, like, that's not okay, without being like, I'm not all high and mighty, for sure. Everyone has their breaking point in doing something. I drove down to see my grandma for the entire month of September last year, and it was like to California, but I got tested, I drove, we wore masks. It was like, it felt very safe, but was it safe? How safe was it actually? So I understand, like, people having this different mentality of what safe is, but just read the CDC website. And if you are not doing all that, then don't do it.
and my whole thing is like, okay, if you're going to be unsafe, then call your event. It's an unsafe concert with no social distancing. Put it right on the fucking poster.
Right.
But instead, you've got people without masks, band and audience, and maybe not at all times, and maybe it isn't up to the venue or the promoter. I don't even know how that works because I'm not in it. I'm not throwing any shows or anything. But it troubles me to see that events are being advertised as safe and socially distant, and then you see the pictures come out, and that's not the case at all.
No,
so
it's not.
And it's going to prolong this thing too, is my concern. And so for people who are following the rules, it's tough. It's hard to watch that. But also, I recognize that the times are changing. Rapid at-home testing those tests are available to some folks. Maybe some folks have been vaccinated, but that hasn't been the case throughout all this. And just for me, it's been hard to watch. And I saw your post the other day, and I made a post on social media myself kind of about it. And, it was just good to have that conversation and to see somebody else who was kind of frustrated with it, because I was feeling like, am I the only fucking one here?
Yeah.
And no, I'm not.
Yeah. I think that it also starts to get into a bit of a classist issue. Everyone misses live music. Not everyone can afford live music right now. And I feel like this could be an opportunity and a space to really band together and find actual very safe ways. Like, sure, throw a concert, but only allow vaccinated healthcare workers in the room for free and charge for the stream. I think that there's a lot of creative ways to continue to make music, continue to have the shows you want to have, and do it safely. I mean, like, for example, the people were very up in arms about the Super Bowl having lots of people there, right? It's like, how? And I know that the majority of those folks were vaccinated healthcare workers. However, there was a lot that were not. And it's the same thing to me. It feels very similar, where it's like, if it's going to become a classist thing, the tests in Colorado are not free. They are in Seattle. I can go and get tested 6 times for free right now if I wanted to. I would never do that to my nose, but I could.
I think they are free now in Colorado.
Oh, good.
But they're like the 3-day tests or something. That's not the rapid testing, which would be essential if you're going to participate in these sort of activities. You need the rapid testing.
Yeah, right. You probably technically would need both. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but being diabetic, I have done so much research on what is safe for me and what is not safe for me. And it does turn into a classist thing. You have to have the time and the ability to go get tested. You have to have the money to buy a 4-top table for a gajillion amount of dollars. And I understand wanting to support the venues and then the artists, and sure. However, there seems to be a missing puzzle piece to me. And as I work with a lot of different artists across the country and understand I work with a lot of Nashville artists, some Canadian artists, and as I watch from around the country, the different artists react differently, I think it has so much to do with the information that people have. In Seattle, if you are walking around in a park, every homeless person has a mask on. I was going on a walk with Miles the other day in the parks outside. Everyone is wearing masks. It feels so different.
Is that overkill?
Potentially, totally. But I think that it also is this mentality of like, you just wear a mask right now. There's no other option. It's just what you do.
Oh, it's not political. It's just science.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh. Incredible.
It is incredible. I don't know how we got to this point. We could have been done with this fucking months ago. This could have run its course in 6 months if everybody just would have worn masks. We could have been done with it, but nobody's willing to sacrifice anything to get through this. They just want it to be over, and they're fucking done with it. And it's really a frustrating thing to see.
Yeah.
I know you think that I shouldn't still love you or tell you that But if I didn't say it, then I'd sure have felt it. Where's the sense in that? I promise I'm not trying to make your life harder or return to where we were. I will go down with this ship. I won't put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be. I know I left too much mess and destruction to come back again, and I caused nothing but trouble. I understand if you can't talk to me again. Well, if you live by the rules of it's over, then I'm sure that makes sense. I will go down with this ship. I won't put my hands up and surrender. There will be no white flag above my door. I'm in love and always will be. And when we meet, I'm sure we will. All that was there will be there still. I'll let it pass and hold my tongue, and you will think that I'll move on. I will go down with this ship. I won't put my hands up and surrender. Oh, there will be no white flag above my door. I'm in
I want to leave on a positive note. It's something I enjoy talking about. One of my favorite things to do is see Burning Man through the eyes of somebody who's attending for the first time. And we traveled to the desert together to go to Burning Man. Was it 2017 maybe?
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you, seeing it in person for the first time?
Take me back. That experience was just what I needed at exactly the right time. Showing up as like to any experience that you have a lot of questions about and not a lot of answers to, there was definitely some fear, which says something about myself too. There was some things I was just worried about. I was like, am I, again, being diabetic? I was like, I hope that everything's cool. But I didn't really realize how functional it was of a place. I really thought of it as like, as if we were roughing it, which you are. However, there's like 1,000 doctors within. Like, if some medical emergency happened, I'd be okay.
They have clinics on site with like huge red crosses in the distance that you can see from far away, and with the amount of stuff that everybody schleps out there, it's roughing it because the weather's shitty and crazy and dusty, but you have everything you need pretty much. I want to say that year that you went was the hottest year that I've ever attended. And when we go to Burning Man and have, the few years since, everybody refers to that year and talks about how fucking hot it was.
So hot. I feel like we were definitely nighttime ramblers. We did a lot of sleeping during the day and partying at night, as I recall, which is how I like to be anyway. It was great. It was truly unlike, this seems like such a cop-out answer. It's unlike anything I'd ever experienced before in my entire life. Complete functional society without money. Well, you have to have money to get there, but without money functioning. Certainly not capitalist, which is a breath of fresh air. And the people that I met there, I was a little less exploratory than I would have liked to have been, both with my psychedelic experience and my just like ability to roam. I felt a little bit like I needed to plan. Some of that has to do with the person I was with. I think that if I had gone alone, it would have been much more like naked Megan running around, just being crazy. But I felt like I had a bit of a filter on, which is the one thing I would have probably changed. Not being with that person, because that would have been great. I just wish I had uncaged myself a little bit more.
Understood. That person was wonderful. That person went into the week more square than that person left the week.
Yes.
And there was a moment when that person came off of the RV and was just absolutely glowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It definitely affected her very positively. And
yeah.
You should come back. This isn't a hard sell, obviously, but you should join us. We're kind of talking about possibly doing even a small scale music camp in the future.
Nice. That would be amazing. I'm hungry for it again. I definitely am. My favorite part of it was just experiencing humans in a way that I had never experienced humans. There felt like a massive amount of respect. Like I was able to say no or yes to anything. Even, everyone really, people who haven't been to Burning Man, I feel like a lot of the stigma is like, well, it's just like this fuck festival. Everyone's sleeping together and you're doing drugs and it's crazy. And it's like, I had a partner at the time, and every time somebody approached me about something sexually, because I was probably wearing like a little sports bra and panties, basically, running around. Every time I felt someone approach me about like, hey, you wanna? And my answer was no. That wasn't the end of the conversation. It was just like, okay, great. Like, how's your burn been? It wasn't like, oh, fuck this lady. Like, she doesn't want to have sex with me. It was very much like, great, tell me about yourself. Like, where are you from? Which was so refreshing. Why can't dudes at bars do that?
It is a very respectful place. And I think people think of it that it's like this thing without boundaries, but there's actually a lot of boundaries, and maybe not in the way people would think, but just in like with one another. Like you alluded to, that the respect is massive, and the culture there is so respectful.
Yes.
I love it, and I've taken so much from it. And I hope that you too enjoyed that experience.
Yes, I did immensely. And thank you for your guidance. You and Carly were like our gurus. It was so awesome to have you guys show us the road.
Shame on you for following a guy around in the desert on drugs all week.
I mean, I was, what was oh, you would appreciate this. I ate a corn dog yesterday.
That's right. We called you corn dog.
2 corn dogs.
You showed up to the playa with like a case. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was 2 nicknames tossed around. There was corn dog, and then there was pedals, because on our first bike ride, I lost my pedal. And then the rest of the time I was like just using the arm on my bike. It was
set the pace for the week.
It set the pace for the week. Yeah. I wish I had gotten, there's like one experience. I mean, there's so many experiences you can get from that place. And I think that I was yearning for like, because I never do this, I was yearning for like a crazy EDM dance party where I was like high as a kite, like going nuts. And I didn't do that. And
well, there's always next year. So.
There's always next year. Like I wanted to like lose my face and be like, what's going on? But I'm also glad that I didn't have that experience, because I had a very powerful experience as the week.
Good. When you do those like intense experiences like that, you pay for it on the other days. So we always drink a ton of water. I get ample sleep. It's so important to the experience. Yeah.
And you can tell, when you're coming up on day 10, you can see the people who haven't. And
on day 40.
Yeah, seriously. It's like, you need a nap. I just like wanted to say that to some people. Like, here's a water bottle. Go take a nap. I felt very grateful that the majority of my time there with y'all was, if I don't want to call it tame, because it was not, nothing about it was tame. It was still very expressive of myself. But I was just so grateful how much I learned about me in a place that I was very confused about who I was. So thank you for being wonderful guides, drugs or not. In that
Thank you for
space.
coming with us. That was quite a fun experience and a very fun year. Thank you for doing this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to catch up with you because I care about you and I care about what you're doing. And I have a lot of respect for you. And I'm a fan. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being candid. And I think it's important to just have more, like, I mean, kind of the pinpoint of our conversation of feeling frustrated about folks thinking the pandemic is over. Like, I'm just trying to approach all of that with more compassion. And I think in general, everyone needs a little bit more of that, whether it comes to racism or sexism or whatever ism you're working with or see others working with, having compassion for those. And you're someone who I've always viewed as having compassion for everyone. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's very sweet.
Thank you for listening to Galaxy Tenants. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. For early access to episodes and exclusive content, check us out on Patreon. Also, if you'd like to communicate with us, send an email to galaxytenants@gmail.com or leave a voicemail on the Galaxy Tenants hotline at 303-550-2065.
You've reached the Galaxy Tenants hotline. Please leave a message.